All right, this video is for lesson 4-8, which is about independent and dependent variables. In this video, you're going to notice that there are generally no numbers at all. We're not going to be talking about any operations, no addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We are just learning how to think about how different kinds of quantities are related and how one quantity depends on another. All right, so in this lesson, we aren't doing any kind of mathematical operations. We're doing mathematical thinking. So it's mostly just notes and just trying to understand the concept. So we have independent variables and dependent variables. Now, up to this point, when we have talked about variables, we have been talking about variables as something that's unknown. And while that's still true, in this lesson, we're also going to be talking about how a variable is something that can change. So, an independent variable is something that changes on its own, like a person who is independent, they can change their own life. They are responsible for their own life. So, an independent variable is a variable that changes on its own and causes the dependent variable to change. Okay, so it causes the dependent variable to change. So another way to look at this is that the independent variable is the cause, and it's the thing that happens first. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into these examples, but I just want you to understand that the independent variable is the one that changes all on its own. It doesn't need the other thing in order to change, and it causes something else to change. It is the thing that happens first. So the dependent variable, like a dependent person, needs somebody else. They rely on somebody else. A dependent variable is the variable that changes because of another variable. Specifically, it changes because of the independent variable. So we'll write that instead. So it changes because of the independent variable. So this variable is the effect. Okay. So the independent variable is the cause. The dependent variable is the effect. All right. So the dependent variable is the thing that happens or changes second. Okay. So the independent variable is the thing that changes all on its own and it causes the other variable, the dependent variable, to change. So the independent variable is the cause. It's the thing that happens first. And the dependent variable is the variable that changes because of the independent variable. So it is the effect. So the independent variable is the cause, and the dependent variable is the effect that happens because of the cause. So the independent variable happens first, and it causes the dependent variable to happen second. So we're going to just go through a few examples. So we've got the first one: Joe drives a certain number of miles in a certain number of hours. So in this case, we have two different variables, two things that change. We have miles and we have hours. Now, if he is driving, he's not causing the hours to change. Hours go by on their own. So we talked about how time, hours, minutes, days, weeks, seconds, years, those are almost always going to be independent because they change all on their own. So hours are independent, okay? But because a certain number of hours go by while Joe is driving, he will drive more miles because the hours are going by. So this one is your dependent. So hours have to go by first in order for Joe to keep driving more miles. So this is the cause, the hours going by is the cause that causes Joe to drive further. All right, the next one, Sarah makes a certain number of dollars in a certain number of hours. So the things that change are the dollars that she earns and the hours that she works. So again, hours go by all on their own. So that's independent. Plus, she has to work a certain number of her hours first before she can get paid. She has to know how many hours she worked before they will pay her. So the amount of money she makes depends on the number of hours she works. So this happens second. She gets paid second. So hours are independent. Dollars are dependent because the number of dollars she makes depends on the number of hours she works. Okay? A box is made of a certain material that weighs a certain number of pounds. So the type of material could be anything. So that's one thing that would change. So the material could be any kind of material. It could be wood, it could be cardboard, paper, metal, glass. So the material could change and the weight of the box, the number of pounds that it weighs could also change. So we have to figure out what is the independent and what is dependent. Well, the weight of the box is going to depend on what the box is made of. If it's made of paper, it'll be lighter. If it's made of metal, it'll be heavier. So the pounds depend on what the box is made of. So the pounds are dependent and the material is independent because the number of pounds, the weight of the box depends on the material, on what the box is made of. So one more example here. We've got a certain amount of batter makes a certain amount of pancakes. So the amount of batter could change. It could be any amount of batter, and it could be any amount of pancakes. So this one is pretty simple because you have to make your batter first before you make pancakes. You can't make batter out of pancakes. You can only make pancakes out of batter. So you have to make the batter first. So the batter is independent because the amount of pancakes you can make depends on the amount of batter that you have. So the pancakes are dependent and batter is independent. If you are struggling with that and you're not quite clear and you need some more examples, again, we have extra videos under here, extra 4-8 videos. There are quite a few. I would take the time to watch those. Plus, these videos here will connect our 4-8 lesson with the 4-9 and 4-10 lessons. So these would be really good videos to watch if you are still having a hard time.